My name is Novaknau, and I'm 29. The band had just switched from the swelling strings of our first dance to something you could breathe in. Glasses chimed. Someone's aunt laughed too loudly. Fairy lights pressed meek halos onto everyone's hair. I could taste the frosting from the cake test on my thumb. The way sugar hangs on the air when a moment tries to convince you it's perfect. And then my mother smiled. It was the smile I grew up inside of. Soft, bright, beautifully rehearsed. A pageant smile, a Sunday smile, the kind that tells the room that everything is okay, even when the furniture is already on fire in the next room. She leaned in close enough for her perfume to erase the last of the cake. "The house you bought will be given to your sister. She deserves it more." It was a sentence delivered like a favor, like she had reorganized the pantry and found a home for something I obviously wasn't using correctly. Next to her, my sister Danielle tilted her head. The sequins on her dress winked like private jokes. "Come on, you've got a husband now," she sneered. Everyone laughed, even my dad. I didn't look at Danielle. I looked at my mother's teeth set in that perfect line. On cue, my father drifted closer as if formality required a witness. Behind them, my husband, Evan, caught my eye, his brows lifting just a hair. He didn't move. He didn't have to. We had already decided who we were. There's a particular silence that arrives at weddings. Not the kind made by empty rooms, but the kind that folds itself over music, presses on laughter, freezes smiles mid-crinkle. That silence arrived now and smoothed everything flat. I just smiled, holding my husband's hand. Evan's mother and father had given us the house at the rehearsal dinner. A modest starter home. Clean, reliable, not flashy. They'd handed me the deed with both hands like a blessing. "You built this together," his father said. "Here's something that helps you build your future." The deed was in my name. A welcome into their family that felt like trust, not ownership. Maybe that was the problem. I learned to recognize problems before they had names. When we were kids, Danielle got the bigger room. I got the explanation. "She's younger, sweetie. She needs more space." When she spilled nail polish remover on my homework table and it chewed the varnish raw, Mom said, "You should have kept your school stuff in your room." Danielle borrowed my sweaters and returned them pilled. I got a lecture about sharing gracefully. She wrecked her first car. The weather was blamed. I worked 3 warehouse Christmases to buy my first one. The lesson was that I was dependable. The pattern was tidy. Danielle asked sweetly, smiled gently, and when that didn't work, my parents reached for their toolkit. Excuses, explanations, a chorus of "she's sensitive" and "you're the resilient one." I was the older sister, the cross-trained adult who could wait, could give in, could hand things over without making a scene. I used to wear resilient like an honor. By 29, it felt more like a bell rope other people tugged when they wanted something. Evan's hand brushed my elbow. Just a tap. A question. I answered without looking at him. I slipped my fingers into my clutch and felt the weight of the slim, flat envelope inside. Paper shouldn't feel heavy. This did. My mother's smile brightened by a watt. "We told her earlier," she said, chirping the words like we were revealing a surprise vacation. "She's had such bad luck with housing, and we thought, well, this would be more useful with her. You two can manage with renting for now," she said. Manage, like a ribbon she was tying for me. I took a breath that tasted like glass. "You're giving away our wedding gift," I said, not loud, not accusing, a sentence that wanted only to be acknowledged. Mom's smile barely trembled. "Don't make this a thing, Nova. It's just a house." "Your envelope was empty," I heard myself say. "We took it as a symbolic gift." I didn't plan the line. I think the line planned me. Across from me, Danielle's lips parted, delighted outrage coloring her cheeks. "Wow," she said, half laughing, like she was above it and beneath it at once. "You really think you're tough now?" Somewhere near the cake, a phone camera lifted as if moved by prayer. I leaned toward Evan and whispered, "Give me the envelope." He didn't ask which one. He didn't ask if I was sure. He slid the envelope out of my clutch with practiced ease and placed it in my palm, palm to palm, like a vow. My father reached for it before my mother could, curiosity scissoring his brow. Danielle leaned in, eyes hungry. They opened it like it might be a check big enough to bend light. They didn't expect the legal kind of paper. Mom's eyes flicked over the page, reading too fast to hide her eagerness. The practiced smile didn't crack. It thinned. Danielle read over her shoulder and lost her smirk before the second paragraph. Dad pinched the top of the page, scanning like the words might rewrite themselves out of embarrassment. "What is this?" he muttered, and what Evan said next made everyone turn pale. "A notarized declaration," Evan said, his voice just steady enough to carry. "Executed 2 weeks ago. It states that all wedding gifts, including the property titled in Nova's name, cannot be sold, gifted, or transferred without her written notarized consent. Any attempt to reassign it will trigger an automatic legal review and restrict any future inheritance arrangements from my family's side." The music didn't so much stop as freeze. "You can't be serious," Danielle said, a thin edge of panic sharpening her vowels. "You're threatening us at your own wedding?" "You made a public claim," I answered. "I'm giving a public boundary." Dad let out a laugh with no humor inside it. "This is petty, Nova, over the top. It's a house, not a child." "No," I said. "It's the principle. It's every principle you taught me that only applied when Danielle didn't want something." Mom slid the paper back into the envelope like it had insulted her manicure. "We're family," she hissed softly. "You don't treat us like criminals." "You went into our house last night," I said, the line as quiet as a blade. "You took photos and posted them online." Danielle blinked slow like a deer, deciding whether the world was real. "It was a joke," she said. "Symbolic." "Symbolic of what?" Evan asked. The second set of words he'd offered, his tone glass calm. "That your entitlement is the gift?" A gasp fluttered from someone's aunt. Mom's smile finally cracked. I could feel a tremor begin in my legs, the aftershock of choosing yourself in public. It should have felt like an earthquake. It felt like stepping onto a dock after a long boat ride. Unsteady, but under it, the blessed promise of solid wood. Danielle squared her shoulders. "You've always been like this," she said, finding her footing in accusation. "Both of you. Self-righteous." I turned to her fully. I didn't raise my voice. "You've coasted on apologies I had to make. You've taken consequences like coats other people could wear. You call it family. I call it access." "Enough," Dad said, trying to retake the room. "This is a wedding." "And this," I said, "is the last day I pretend this doesn't happen." Evan's fingers threaded through mine. 1, 2, 3, a countdown. The band waited. The guests waited. The old script waited for me to obey it. I didn't. I took out a second envelope and held it between 2 fingers. Danielle's name was printed on the front. She stared like it burned. Mom went to snatch it, but I pulled it back half an inch. A boundary made visible. "This one is real, not symbolic," I said gently. "Consider it documentation." Behind us, the cake sighed. Somewhere far away, a cork popped indecently cheerful. "Dance," Evan said to the band softly, like a dare. The drummer lifted his sticks. The singer looked at me as if I were the conductor. I nodded once. The music rose. The room exhaled. And Evan pulled me onto the floor. We danced like nothing had happened and everything had changed. When the song ended, I looked back at the table where my parents and Danielle stood frozen. They were statues. Beautiful, brittle, and absolutely certain the script would start again if they waited long enough. It wouldn't. The wedding ended the way most wars do. Not with a bang, but with the slow realization that everyone had lost something, but only some had gained clarity. My parents left without saying goodbye. Danielle followed them like a shadow, unsure where it belonged. The guests stayed, though. Most of them anyway. They danced. They ate. They whispered. But they stayed. By the time the night folded into the kind of quiet that settles over wrung-out laughter and empty champagne flutes, Evan and I were sitting on the edge of the dance floor. My heels were off, dress wrinkled, makeup halfway down my face. I felt lighter than I had in years. "You okay?" he asked. "I'm better than okay," I said. "I'm free." He smiled, the kind that doesn't need teeth. "Good. Because I meant every word in that document. I know you did." We sat there for a while longer, watching the cleanup crew sweep confetti that looked like tiny battles. Someone had spilled wine on the gift table. The cake was half-eaten. The fairy lights blinked unevenly, struggling to stay on. It was perfect. The next morning, we woke up in the house that was supposed to be stolen from us. Sunlight came through the windows in clean stripes. The air smelled like coffee and silence, the good kind. Evan was already up, standing in the kitchen with his phone in hand. His face was serious, but not worried. "What's wrong?" I asked. "Your sister texted." My stomach tightened. "What did she say?" He turned the phone toward me. The message was short. "You're vindictive and cruel. I hope you're happy." I read it twice, then handed the phone back. "Delete it." "You sure?" "I'm sure." He deleted it without another word. Then he looked at me. Really looked. "How do you feel?" I thought about it. Really thought. "I feel like I finally won something that wasn't a competition." He smiled. "Good. Now let's make breakfast." We did. Scrambled eggs, toast, orange juice. Nothing fancy. Nothing forced. Just us, in our house, building a life that didn't need approval. The weeks after the wedding passed like a detox. I didn't hear from my parents. I didn't hear from Danielle. At first, it felt like absence. Then, it started to feel like relief. My phone stopped buzzing with guilt-soaked messages. My inbox stayed clean. The silence wasn't empty. It was full. Full of mornings where I didn't check my shoulder for judgment. Full of evenings where I didn't rehearse apologies I'd never owe. Evan noticed the shift before I did. "You're sleeping better," he said one night. "Am I?" "Yeah. You used to wake up every few hours. Now you sleep straight through." He was right. I was sleeping like someone who'd finally put down a weight they'd been carrying since childhood. But peace doesn't arrive without tests. 3 weeks after the wedding, a letter came. No return address, but I knew the handwriting. Mom's. Elegant loops. Carefully measured spaces between words. The kind of penmanship that looked like love, but felt like control. I stood in the driveway holding the envelope, debating whether to open it. Evan came outside, coffee in hand. "From them?" he asked. "Yeah. You want to read it?" I thought about it. Then I tore the envelope in half without opening it. The sound was quiet, but final. "No," I said. "I don't." We threw the pieces in the trash together. Oh. By the second month, I started to notice something strange. The internal voice that used to whisper, "You're being selfish," had gone quiet. The reflex to apologize for existing had faded. I could walk through my own house without bracing for criticism that wasn't there. Therapy helped. My therapist called it rewiring. "You've spent your whole life being the fixer," she said. "Now you're learning to just be." "It feels wrong sometimes," I admitted. "Like I'm supposed to feel guilty." "That's the old wiring talking. You're not supposed to feel guilty for having boundaries." She was right. But knowing it and feeling it are two different things. 3 months after the wedding, Evan and I were sitting on the porch when a car pulled up. My stomach dropped. I recognized the vehicle immediately. It was my dad. He got out slowly, hands in his pockets, the way people do when they're trying to look casual but feel exposed. Evan tensed beside me. "Want me to stay?" he asked quietly. "Yeah." Dad walked up the driveway like he was approaching a crime scene. When he reached the porch, he stopped at the bottom step. "Nova," he said. Just my name. No greeting, No explanation. Dad. Silence stretched between us like a canyon. Your mother sent me, he said finally. Of course she did. He flinched. She wants to talk. She thinks. We think. Maybe we can work this out. I looked at him. Really looked. He was smaller than I remembered. Tired. The armor of authority he used to wear had cracks in it now. Work what out exactly? I asked. This distance. This anger. I'm not angry, I said. I'm done. Done. Done being the one who bends. Done being the safety net. Done pretending this is normal. He shifted his weight. Nova, we're family. Family respects boundaries. You ignored them. We made a mistake. You made a choice. I interrupted. At my wedding, in front of everyone, you chose Danielle over me? Again. His jaw tightened. That's not fair. Neither was taking my house. The words hung in the air like smoke. Dad looked down at his shoes. When he looked back up, his eyes were wet. I don't know how to fix this, he said quietly. You don't, I said, because it's not yours to fix. He stood there for a long moment, then nodded. Once. Like he understood, even if he didn't want to. I'm sorry, he said. I know. He turned to leave, then stopped. Your mother misses you. Then she can say that herself, without conditions. He nodded again, then walked back to his car. I watched him drive away, and for the first time, I didn't feel guilty. Evan squeezed my hand. You okay? Yeah, I think I am. 4 months passed, then 5, then 6. Life settled into a rhythm that felt honest. Evan and I painted the house. We planted a garden. We hosted dinners with friends who didn't demand apologies for existing. I stopped checking my phone for messages that never came. I stopped rehearsing conversations I'd never have. The silence between me and my family became less about absence and more about choice. My therapist called it healing. I called it surviving. On our first anniversary, Evan surprised me. He'd framed the document from the wedding, the notarized declaration that had turned everyone pale. Why? I asked, laughing. Because, he said, it's the moment you chose yourself. And I want to remember that forever. I looked at the frame, at the legal words that had felt like armor. Now they just felt like history. You know what's funny? I said. What? I don't think I need this anymore. The document? The fight. I spent so long preparing to defend myself. But now, I don't need to. They're not here. And I'm okay with that. Evan smiled. Then maybe we don't hang it. Maybe we burn it. We did. That night, in the backyard, we lit the document on fire and watched it curl into ash. It felt ceremonial, not vengeful, just final. A full year passed before the next message arrived. By then, the air in our house felt different. Still, calm, honest. The walls didn't echo with anxiety anymore. Every inch of space finally felt mine. Evan and I had built small rituals. Friday takeout nights, Saturday morning drives, late-night laughter that didn't have to be whispered. The kind of life that doesn't need to be defended. Our anniversary came quietly. We didn't plan a big trip. We just decided to take a drive until the coast appeared. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. The house that started a war now gave us peace. The sky was a watercolor that evening, lavender fading into gold. We parked near a cliff overlooking the ocean, the sound of waves, rough but honest. Evan leaned against the car, looking out. Remember when you said you'd never dance again after that wedding? I laughed. Yeah. Turns out I was wrong about a lot of things. Like what? Like thinking I needed them to feel whole. He smiled. You were whole the day you said no. The rest was just cleanup. We stayed there until the sun went down, headlights blending with the last bit of daylight. It felt symbolic, leaving the past in shadow, driving into something steady. When we got home, there was an envelope in the mailbox. No return address, but I knew that handwriting. My stomach didn't twist this time. It just settled. Inside was a single card, cream paper, gold edges, her handwriting elegant and sharp. "We miss you. We love you. Come back when you're ready to be part of the family again." I stared at it for a long time, long enough for the ink to stop feeling like a threat. There was a time when that kind of message would have broken me open, sent me spiraling into guilt, into apology, into another cycle of surrender. But now I could see it for what it was, an invitation not to reconnect, but to regress. Evan walked up behind me, reading over my shoulder. He didn't say a word. He didn't have to. I tore the card in half. The sound was quiet, almost polite. Then I dropped the pieces into the trash. People think closure comes from reconciliation. It doesn't. It comes from refusal. Refusing to step back into rooms that once required you to shrink. That night, I took one last walk around the house, barefoot on the cold floor. Lights dimmed low. Every corner whispered something different. Memory, hurt, healing. I stopped by the fridge. There was still one photo, the candid one from the wedding. Mom mid-frown, Danielle in disbelief, me holding the envelope like a shield. Evan steady beside me. I smiled at it, not out of triumph, but gratitude. Because that was the moment everything finally made sense. Breaking cycles isn't dramatic. It's deliberate. It's the moment you stop needing an apology to feel free. For our second anniversary, we took another drive. Same car, same coast, same wind tearing through our laughter. No audience, no judgment, no invisible debts. Evan rolled the windows down and asked, "You ever think you'll talk to them again?" I thought about it for a while, then I said, "Maybe, but not like before. Not as their version of me." He nodded. "You don't miss them?" I smiled faintly. I don't miss being the one they used. We drove in silence after that. Not the heavy kind, but the earned kind. The kind you only get after a war that finally ends. When we got back home, I unlocked the door without hesitation, turned off the alarm, and walked straight to the kitchen. The same lock they once had keys to, the same house that no longer belonged to them, the same woman who, for the first time, felt safe in her own name. I used to think boundaries meant losing family. Now I know boundaries define family, the real kind. And in that quiet, sunlit kitchen, I realized something simple. I didn't want their version of family anymore. I wanted peace. And I had it. Every time I unlock my own door without bracing, every time I wake beside someone who loves me without a price tag, that's family. That's freedom. That's home. But back at the wedding, after we danced, after the music rose and the room inhaled, that's when things truly shifted. Danielle's mouth opened around a fresh argument, and the bass line swallowed it. We turned, Evan and I, into the song. My mother's smile finally fell off her face. Danielle's glitter stopped winking. The envelope waited in my hand like a truth with edges. I pressed it into my father's palm as we passed him on the floor. "Help isn't theft," I said, "and love isn't access." We danced, not for show, for reclamation. At the edge of my vision, I saw my mother staring, working on a new smile that would fit what the room had become. I hoped for once it wouldn't come. The music was still playing when the whispers started. I could feel them ripple through the tables like the slow roll of a tide, cousins muttering, an aunt pretending to fix her napkin while her phone camera shook. One of my mother's friends mouthing drama behind her champagne flute. That's the thing about families like mine. They love an audience almost as much as they hate accountability. My mother stood frozen beside the cake table, her face painted in politeness, but her eyes narrow and shaking. Danielle kept trying to laugh it off, a brittle, high-pitched sound that didn't belong to her usual charm. She still thought she could recover the scene. "Seriously, Nova," she said, her voice cracking with disbelief. "You can't be doing this over a house." Evan squeezed my hand, but I didn't look at him. "This isn't about a house," I said quietly. "It's about everything that was ever mine turning into hers." Danielle let out a scoff, her tone rising. Oh my God. Are we really going to rehash high school right now? You're married. Move on. High school was practice, I said. You took my room, my clothes, my peace. This was just your graduation project. The room trembled under the weight of awkward laughter. Someone turned the music down. It wasn't quiet anymore. It was tense. Mom's voice sliced through it. We're not doing this here. Nova, stop embarrassing yourself. Myself? I repeated, blinking. You announced you were giving away my wedding gift in public. That's not embarrassment, Mom. That's theft with hors d'oeuvres. Dad ran a hand through his thinning hair, muttering to her, "Just let it go." But he wasn't looking at her. He was looking at me, the way someone stares at a stranger who knows too much. Danielle's expression flickered with something I'd seen all my life. Panic hidden under privilege. She leaned in, trying to soften it. Nova, you know I'm struggling, right? My apartment situation is basically impossible, and your new house is just sitting there. There it was. The justification. The quiet entitlement dressed up as need. Evan finally spoke, voice even. We're not running a donation program, Danielle. Her face flushed. Easy for you to say, Mr. Moneybags. You married up? Evan's jaw tightened, but before he could answer, I stepped in. You mean he married someone who doesn't cave anymore? Danielle blinked. What's that supposed to mean? It means the free ride is over. A murmur swept across the tables. My mother's hand trembled as she tried to reclaim the narrative. Everyone, calm down, she said, her voice quivering with false grace. This has gone far enough. But I wasn't done. Mom, I said softly, did you know Danielle went into our house last night? That froze her mid-breath. She took photos, posted them, captioned it. Finally got a place that fits me. Mom's lips parted. Dad frowned. Danielle's hand jerked toward her phone like she could somehow delete the evidence retroactively. How? How did you? She stammered. Security footage, I said, keeping my tone flat. And your post had a geotag. A soft gasp scattered from the guests. Danielle turned scarlet. You're stalking me now? No, Evan said. We just check who tries to open our front door at midnight. The room's air shifted. The fake warmth evaporated. All that was left was truth, heavy and unfiltered. I reached into my clutch again. The movement alone was enough to make my mother's head snap toward me. She thought it was another envelope, another blow. And it was. This, I said, holding up a crisp sheet of paper, is a notice of unauthorized access and misuse of personal property. We plan to send it quietly, but since this conversation is now public... Danielle's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Mom snatched the paper out of my hand, eyes scanning. You're ridiculous, she hissed. This is family business, not something you bring lawyers into. Family business, I repeated, voice breaking into a shaky laugh. That's what you said when she maxed my debit card at 17. When she crashed the car Grandpa helped me buy. When she sold my old laptop and called it borrowing. Every single time you turned it into family business. My father's voice cut in, sharp as gravel. You're making a fool of yourself. Sit down. I turned to him, finally meeting his eyes. I've been sitting down for 29 years, Dad. You just never noticed. The silence that followed was a living thing. Dense, wet, suffocating. Evan's voice broke it, steady and clear. We'd appreciate if no one touches our property again. That includes our house, our car, or anything tied to my family's name. Danielle's eyes flared. Your family's name. So that's what this is about? Status? No, he said simply. Respect. Mom tried one last time to salvage her dignity. We raised you to be kind, Nova, to be generous. You raised me to give, I said, and you taught Danielle to take. That landed like thunder. For a second, even the fairy lights seemed to flicker. Danielle stepped forward, trembling. You really think you're better than me now? No, I said quietly. Just done letting you decide what I owe. Her lower lip quivered. You're heartless. Then maybe you should stop trying to find my pulse in my bank account. A few guests gasped. One of Evan's uncles clapped quietly, like a man who knew the satisfaction of boundaries long overdue. Mom's voice was almost pleading now. "We're family. We can fix this later." "No," I said. "Later is how you kept me small." Danielle tried to laugh again, but the sound cracked halfway through. "You're not perfect either, Nova." "Never said I was," I replied. "But at least I'm not pretending theft is love." Her eyes brimmed with frustrated tears. "You'll regret this." "I already did," I said, "for 29 years. And with that, I turned away. Evan took my hand, guided me back to the dance floor. The song had shifted into something slow, almost cinematic. We didn't speak as we started moving again. Around us, the guests pretended to eat, pretended to chat, pretended not to stare. When the song ended, we bowed slightly to the band as if nothing had happened. But everyone knew everything had. That night, after the reception, we drove home in the same car they'd tried to claim. Windows down, wind wild, silence louder than any argument. When we pulled into our driveway, Evan turned off the engine and said quietly, "You okay?" I stared at the house, the quiet street, the empty night. "I'm more than okay," I said. "I'm finally done." He smiled, reaching for my hand. "Good. Because something tells me your family isn't." He was right. The next morning, they proved it. The morning after the wedding felt like waking up in someone else's house. The dress hung over the chair. Confetti still stuck to the bottom of my shoes. The light came through the blinds in neat stripes, organized and calm. Everything felt different, cleaner, like I'd finally washed something off my skin that had been there so long I'd stopped noticing the weight. Evan was already up, coffee brewing, phone in hand. He looked at me over the rim of his mug. "Your mom texted." My stomach tightened. "What did she say?" He turned the phone toward me. The message was long, paragraphs of wounded language and passive aggression dressed up as concern. "Nova, I can't believe you would humiliate us like that in front of everyone. Your father barely slept. Danielle is devastated. We only wanted to help her, and you made us look like villains. This isn't who you are. Please call me so we can talk like adults." I read it twice, then handed the phone back. "Delete it." "You sure?" "I'm sure." He deleted it without another word. Then he set the phone down and looked at me. Really looked. "How do you feel?" I thought about it. "I feel like I finally stopped apologizing for taking up space." He smiled. "Good, now let's make breakfast." We did. Pancakes, eggs, orange juice. Nothing fancy, nothing forced. Just us, in our house, building a morning that didn't need approval. But the messages didn't stop. Over the next few days, they came in waves. My mother, my father, my aunt, cousins I hadn't spoken to in years, all of them suddenly experts on family dynamics and forgiveness. Each message had the same architecture. "You went too far. You embarrassed everyone. Family means compromise. You're being selfish." I didn't respond to any of them. At first, it felt cruel. Then it started to feel necessary. Evan noticed the shift before I did. "You're lighter," he said one evening. "Am I?" "Yeah. You used to check your phone every 10 minutes. Now you barely look at it." He was right. I was sleeping like someone who'd finally put down a bag of bricks they'd been carrying since childhood. The guilt that used to wake me at 3 a.m. The voice that whispered, "You're being too harsh. You should apologize." It had gone quiet. 3 weeks after the wedding, a package arrived. No return address, but I knew the handwriting on the label. Mom's. Elegant, careful, the kind of script that looked like affection but felt like control. I stood in the driveway holding the box, debating whether to open it. Evan came outside, keys in hand. "From them?" he asked. "Yeah. You want to open it?" I thought about it. Then I set the box down on the curb and walked back inside. "No," I said. "I don't." We left it there. By evening, it was gone. Probably taken by a neighbor or the trash collectors. I didn't care which. By the second month, I started to notice something strange. The internal voice that used to whisper, "You're being selfish," had gone quiet. The reflex to apologize for existing had faded. I could walk through my own house without bracing for criticism that wasn't there. Therapy helped. My therapist called it detoxing from obligation. "You've spent your whole life being the accommodator," she said. "Now you're learning that no is a complete sentence." "It feels wrong sometimes," I admitted, "like I'm supposed to feel guilty." "That's the conditioning talking. You're not supposed to feel guilty for having boundaries. You're supposed to feel proud." She was right. But knowing it and feeling it are two different things. 3 months after the wedding, Evan and I were sitting on the porch when a car pulled up. My stomach dropped. I recognized the vehicle immediately. It was my dad. He got out slowly, hands in his pockets, the way people do when they're trying to look casual but feel exposed. Evan tensed beside me. "Want me to stay?" he asked quietly. "Yeah." Dad walked up the driveway like he was approaching a minefield. When he reached the porch, he stopped at the bottom step. "Nova," he said. Just my name. No greeting, no explanation. "Dad." Silence stretched between us like a tightrope. "Your mother sent me," he said finally. "Of course she did." He flinched. "She wants to talk. She thinks, we think, maybe we can work this out." I looked at him. Really looked. He was smaller than I remembered. Tired. The armor of authority he used to wear had cracks in it now. "Work what out exactly?" I asked. "This distance. This anger." "I'm not angry," I said. "I'm done." Done? Done being the one who bends. Done being the safety net. Done pretending this is normal. He shifted his weight. "Nova, we're family. Family respects boundaries. You ignored them. We made a mistake. You made a choice." I interrupted. "At my wedding. In front of everyone. You chose Danielle over me. Again." His jaw tightened. "That's not fair. Neither was trying to take my house." The words hung in the air like smoke. Dad looked down at his shoes. When he looked back up, his eyes were wet. "I don't know how to fix this," he said quietly. "You don't," I said, "because it's not yours to fix." He stood there for a long moment, then nodded. Once. Like he understood, even if he didn't want to. "I'm sorry," he said. "I know." He turned to leave, then stopped. "Your mother misses you. Then she can say that herself, without conditions." He nodded again, then walked back to his car. I watched him drive away, and for the first time, I didn't feel guilty. Evan squeezed my hand. "You okay?" "Yeah, I think I am,"